We're going to have a look at how to save line work or a sketch with a transparent background. So in other words, all I can see is the sketch line work and no other pixels in the file. To start off with, you either need to draw a sketch of your product, or you can find sketches online that relate to your product or are your product. So for instance, if you wanted to do a sketch of a kettle or include a sketch of a kettle, you could use something like this or that one. So you can either draw your own kettle design based on what you did for task number 2, or you can find a sketch that represents your kettle. In the browser, I've just put in kettle sketch. Other options for browsing might be industrial design concept sketch, and then you can add whether it's a kettle, a toaster, and you get these sort of nice drawings. It would be best if you can draw your own, but if not, you can have a look online and see if you can find something that relates. You can also use blueprints, architectural blueprint images. Okay, so something like this. So whichever building you did, you can usually find some sort of line drawing to use in your rendering. Before you submit your work in week 14 and 15, I will be creating another tutorial on how to attribute the original file. So make sure that you keep all of your web links and store them on a Word document, and then I will show you how to attribute them before you submit. So for me, for this tutorial, I've downloaded 2 sketches. One's a PNG file, and I also found this one, which I thought might be a good one to use. This is a JPEG file, and we're going to do a transparent background for those. So to start off with, open Photoshop and create an A3 size canvas. I will just adjust my workspace. Create new. Industrial design students will be working A3 size at 300 pixels per inch. Architects may wish to use A2 or A1 size canvases. Create. In this example, I'm going to place the image, place embedded, and I'm going to start with the heavier line drawing, if I can find it. There it is. Okay, so this is the JPEG image that I'm going to start with. Now, if I have a look at the layers and hit enter, you'll notice that on the layers, this has come in as a smart object, so it's difficult for Photoshop to adjust the image from this point. So you need to right click on the layer and rasterize it. If I close the background or hide it, you'll notice that I've got my checkerboard, which indicates that there's nothing on this part of the layer, and this image has white pixels, black pixels, and grey pixels. So as soon as I rasterize it, what you need to do, and I'll just zoom in a little bit more. Often you need to adjust the contrast quality. If we go into image adjustment, You can either do it through brightness and contrast. I like to use levels. The levels palette shows you the amount of black pixels, grey pixels and white pixels. And if we adjust these little sliders left and right, you can increase the contrast quality. So you'll notice that that was the original sketch or drawing, and that's an improved contrast, which is what I want. Hit OK. Now I'm going to tell Photoshop that I want to get rid of all of these white pixels. So select at the top menu, select by color range. The color range palette has a drop down menu. You can either sample the color that you want to select. I'm going to actually go down here to highlights. And if you move the fuzziness around, you'll notice that this little preview screen shows you what kind of selection you're about to make. So that one suits me. I can see plenty of line work in this and hit OK. Now you'll notice that the ants are running around all of these white areas, and I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard and probably delete 2 or 3 times to ensure that that space is completely clear. Command D or Control D to deselect, and now I have a file that I can use, and I'll be able to incorporate some other background and just have the line work showing through. So in order for that to work, go into File, Save As, and we're going to save this as a TIFF, Zaha Hadid version 2. So make sure that the format is set to TIFF and save. The TIFF dialog box opens and you need to make sure that Save Transparency is selected and OK. Alright, so if I close that, let's create a new canvas, A3 size, portrait, create. On this canvas, I'm going to create a background. So at this stage, I'm just going to use a marquee tool. I will create a new layer. And in this background, I'm going to just place in a gradient. Okay, so I've got this bronze looking gradient. Command D to deselect. I'm now going to place my line drawing, File, Place Embedded, and I want to find Zaha Hadid version 2, Place, and return or enter on the keyboard. So as you can see, it's come in with transparency. It's also a smart object, so once again I need to rasterize this. And I can move that image around. Whoops, wrong layer. There we go. I can move that image around. I can also change the color of the image. So if I go into Image, make sure that you've selected the correct layer, Image, Adjustment, and Hue Saturation. You can choose Colorize and change the color, increase the saturation, so how bright or vivid you want the color to be. If you want it to be completely white, then move the lightness slider to the right. And so on. If you don't want any color at all, reduce the hue to 0, the saturation to 0, and then you're just working with your grays. and select OK when you're happy with it. So I would expect to see some of these transparent line drawings in your final submission.